their how-to series. I'd like to maybe pass my words of apology to all of you for starting a little bit late today. The attendance has been affected, I think, because of weather and also probably it's Friday. But I hope on Monday we'll also have a very good attendance. Without much ado, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Papu, who is the facilitator and the presenter of the series, as we all know. But before we start, I'd like to ask Brother Fundu, probably to just give us a word of prayer before we start.
Let's close our eyes and pray.
Yes.
Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for this beautiful day that you've given to us. We thank you for the breath of life. We thank you for the fact that we're in school. We thank you for the speaker that is here to address us. And we thank you for the fact that you still call us to go to Malek, but you still call us back to your presence. And we pray that as the speaker is about to speak to us, we pray that you may install your words and let it work so that everything that it says may come from you. And more than anything, may everything that is said here convict us so that we may be closer to you. And that when we come back on our face, we may be part of that crowd because we see it. Bless us now. Praise Christ and receive. Amen.
And maybe I just forgot one thing. Today the pastor came with the wife who is his mom. So I just really I would like to relate things to you guys. Thank you very much.
I thought I should bring my wife to add more on the audience. All right. We promised to take a few minutes and then we can also share some discussion together. What we want to talk about is how to, very interesting, do you know what I want to talk about? How to what? No, good student is Monday. Today is how to avoid temptation. Yeah, today is how to avoid temptation. There's a song, I don't know whether you guys know it, that used to be sung some years ago. It says, I can't remember the wording, but it paraphrased it would say, I can face anything but temptation. In other words, I can deal with anything, but don't give me temptation. I cannot deal with temptation. When you say, how do we avoid, how can one avoid temptation? The assumption is that one does not want to be tempted. It's not wrong to be tempted. You can't apologize for being tempted. Because how do I avoid temptation? I think what we are saying is, how can I not yield to temptation? We cannot avoid temptation. Temptation does not ask permission from you whether it should come around. But I think the thing is, how do I, if I'm tempted, how can I not yield to temptation? Because that's where the problem is. It is yielding. Now the challenge with temptation, but I just wrote a book on the very subject, so I can talk the whole week here. The challenge about temptation is that you are never tempted to do something you don't want to do. So temptation is an opportunity to do that which you want to do, but you may be afraid to do it. That's why it's a challenge. In other words, you will never be tempted to jump to the moon. Because first of all, it's impossible. So you can't say, please help me, there's a temptation, I want to jump to the moon. You are not going to be tempted to do that. One, it's impossible. Two, what are you going to be doing in the moon? So there's impossibility, there's also lack of interest. If you never smoked, and somebody comes and says to you, I want to tempt you with cigarette, more than being tempted, you can probably be annoyed. You can be annoyed. You stop smoking, you're annoying me. So it's not a temptation. Sometimes we think we're tempted when we are not tempted. In other words, when somebody brings something you don't like, you think you've conquered temptation when you were not tempted. Let me give you an example. Since we are students here, if a young man approaches you and proposes and wants to take you out or whatever, maybe that's a temptation, I don't know, wants to take you out and you say, no, I'm not really. Or he says, can I spend the night with you? He says, he's trying to tempt me. No. And then you you say no and you make it, and then you think you were tempted. That's not temptation. You don't even need prayer for that. Because the guy who actually asked you to do that is not the guy you're interested in. So that's not temptation. Don't even pat yourself, yeah, I'm strong. I said, no. That was not temptation. It's just that this guy happened not to be the right guy. It is temptation when the right guy, the one you've been dreaming about, the one you've been having fantasy in your mind, when he comes and says, I'm not saying you want to say yes, but that's a temptation, because then you will have to get all the resolve you have and all the F and the energy you have not to go. Even when the guy now is going, you'll be like, hey, did I make the right decision? Is he going to come again tomorrow? Maybe this was my last chance. now that is temptation. Because not only was there an interest in you, but also there was a possibility. Sometimes if there's no possibility, like if a person comes to you and says, can you kiss me? All right, forgive me for being open. Can you kiss me? And you say, in the classroom. So I mean, because of the environment, the temptation just breaks off. It just melts away. Because even if I wanted to, even if I would have loved to, even if there's interest, but because there is lack of opportunity, because it's not possible, because of the environment, I can't. I may be later when there's no something like that. Now, if I'm throwing these things at you, it is also an indication as to how you can actually conquer temptation. Use the very same environment, the very same things where you would not be able, even if you wanted to. You use that and it can help. So it's always good to understand what temptation is, like what I call the DNA of temptation, the makeup, the build-up, the cell structure of temptation and how it works. Because then you can know when you are tempted. One of the interesting things about temptation is you can never be tempted unless there's a commitment. You must have a commitment. If you, for example, a person who does not study at Forthare cannot be tempted not to come to class. Because he doesn't study here. So, hey, today I'm tempted not to go for class. No, you can't. Even if you're not tempted, you won't go to class. You're not a student, you're not registered, period. So temptation follows commitment. If you must wake up tomorrow morning because of a class at 8, then you've opened a window for temptation. Because temptation is going to say to you, you don't have to wake up. You can always wake up for that class. It's cold. It's like this. Because there's a commitment to do something. Temptation is an opportunity for you to take a path of least resistance. That's temptation. Temptation says, go the natural flow. Take the natural flow. Don't go up the stream. You don't have to wake up. You don't have to attend the class. You can always try this. It appeals to your, I don't want to quickly say theologically to your sinful side, but it appeals to your lazy side. There's always the lazy side and the stronger one, more industrious one. It appeals to your lazy side. Of course, through discipline, you may actually eliminate that over time, so that it's no longer an issue. If you're going to wake up, you're going to wake up. That is why you must also train yourself to be able to do things that you must do, even if you don't feel like it. Temptation tends to work with your feeling. It says, follow, as they say, your instinct. Have you heard that before? Follow your instinct. If it says this, go for it. But temptation says no. Temptation is, not temptation. Temptation does that. But when you say no, you are actually, if I would use the word ethics. Ethics is not necessarily doing something you want to do. It is doing something you ought to do. So I must be in class. Whether I'm feeling like I should be there or not, I have to be there, period. End of the story. So you drag yourself to class. First. You do that long enough, you'll discover that in life you will be successful. On Monday we'll talk about that. You tend to be successful in life if you learn to say no to yourself. Now, whenever I talk about temptation, the first temptation that comes to us is to say, when a person tempts you, you must say no to that person. Temptation is not directed at what the other person is proposing. It is directed at you yielding to that proposition. When you say no, you're not saying, if it is real temptation, you never say no to the person, you say no to the feeling. You see the difference? Some people get angry. How can you tempt me? How can you tempt me? No one can tempt you. The Bible says you are tempted when you are drawn from, there's a lust. So temptation is an opportunity for you to fulfill your lust. So you can never blame someone for tempting you. It is because there's lust. It is because you smoke cigarette. So now I'm smoking in front of you. Hey, this guy is tempting me. No. It's because when you enjoy cigarette, it's in here. Temptation is something that's in you. Not necessarily temptation, but the lust is in you. Temptation is an opportunity for you to fulfill that lust. Now you cannot blame the devil. The devil made me do it. The devil will create the opportunity for you to do what you want to do. So when you fall, don't say, yeah, he tempted me. No. He didn't. He maybe tempted you, but you had you remember the story of our president some years ago when there was a story that he was tempted, not tempted, that he was what's the word, not tempted. What do you do when you organize a lady for somebody? He's not aware, so that you can catch him. What do you say? He was trapped. Yeah, that's the word. It's like a mouse. He was trapped. So it was a trap. It was a trap, and they organized this lady so that they could trap it, and then they can be able to. No. You see, the thing about the trap is you trap a mouse, and you look at what the mouse likes. That's a trap. So you can't say I was trapped. No, you were not trapped. They gave you what you like, and you went for it. Because they knew you would do that. So, how do I make sure that I'm not trapped? I make sure that I don't have things here in me that would make me fall for anything because of what I have in me. In other words, the attractiveness of temptation stems from the ugliness in you. if you are thirsty, anything that looks like water is attractive. Not because it is attractive, but because you are thirsty. But the moment you deal with the thirst, you see water and you have no problem. I don't know if you see my point. If you are in the desert and then there's a person who drinks water like this and you say, the water is attractive. No. It's not that the water is attractive. You are thirsty. Are you following me? So, if something is outside, a stimuli, something is outside of me and I find it attractive, in order to deal with it, I mustn't necessarily chase it away. I must actually fulfill and deal with the thirst inside. When you deal with that one loses its attractiveness. Because it gets its attractiveness from the desire. It gets its attractiveness from the if you please, from the ugliness. No. So your question then is, how do I avoid temptation? How do I find strength and resolve not to yield to temptation? First of all, the most difficult prayer to make is the one that says, lead us not into temptation. That's very difficult. You know, when you are faced with temptation, the last thing you want to do is to pray. Yes, pray after, not during. During is nice. I'm not going to pray. This thing I'm going to do is wrong, but I'm going for it. I'll see what happens later. To pray and say, lead me not into temptation could be one of your strongest prayers. All right, let's work together. I'm going to throw it not in the order. One, how then do I avoid yielding into temptation? I'll come with a biblical one probably towards later, the strictly biblical one. But how do I make sure that I don't yield to temptation? One of the most important things you need to do is you must make up your mind. You must make what is called a resolution. Sometimes we fail because there is no resounding resolution in our minds that Just take an example. Let's say smoking. If you say, I'm stopping to smoke now, I will never smoke again, you've made a resolution. You're going to be tempted, but you've made a resolution not to smoke. If you tell yourself, I will not steal, I will not, you're going to make a commitment, I will not steal, you'll be tempted. But if you say, if I ask you, if you were to walk into a classroom and you see a cell phone, would you take it to the security? And then you say to me, it will depend. You can never conquer temptation if you use such clauses like it will depend. Temptation can only be conquered if you have a strict and a clear resolution. I will not do it. Now, it doesn't mean you, when it confronts you, automatically you will not do it. You may, but then you will say now, if you do it, you're falling from your commitment. But if you don't make a commitment, even if you fall, there's no issue because you need to make a commitment. So people, because we are afraid of falling, we don't want to make commitment. And I ask you, would you drink alcohol? Hey, you must never say never. You must never say never. Now, the moment you say you must never say never, you know what are you doing in your mind? You're tricking your mind. You're killing your mind. Your mind cannot actually produce enough energy for you to refuse when you are not equipping it with a resolution. You've got to. What can I think? What illustration can I? Now Peter, for example, Peter says to Christ, all of them can leave you, but I'll never. You remember? He says, never. And then Christ says, I'll pray for you, we're going to do it. He says, never. They can all leave you, I will never. And people say, you see, and when they use that as an illustration, you see, you must never say never. Look at what Peter, but that's wrong. That's reading the story in the wrong way. Now follow the whole story. When they came to arrest Christ, Peter was the one who took out the sword and went for the head and missed and got the ear, because the head was smaller than the ear. Neither here nor there. But you see the result that he really meant it. I mean, you've got 100 soldiers and alone defending Christ, he really meant it. But you know, before the cock could crow 3 times, he had denied it. So what's the lesson? You must never say never. No. Because he had made a commitment, when that happened, he felt very disappointed. He went and prayed the whole night. The reason why Peter could learn from that mistake and even repent, it was because he had disappointed himself. One of the challenges with us, that we continue doing the wrong thing forever, it is because we never make a resolution. When you make a resolution and you fail, you feel like you've disappointed yourself. And because you've disappointed yourself, there is enough energy to start again. But if there is no commitment, no standard, nothing, and you do something wrong, you do it because after all, you've not disappointed anyone. But when you make a resolution, to yourself at least, you disappoint yourself. If I make a resolution to my wife, I'll be faithful to you, and make that vow in front of everyone. I'm going to be faithful to you. I'm going to love you only. I will never love anyone. Now and then I'm confronted with a woman and my wife is not there, and I think about my vow that I've made to her, that I've made to God, that I've made to myself, and I say no. Or sometimes I fall and I find myself doing that, but what have I done? I've disappointed her, I've disappointed myself, I've disappointed God. I don't feel good. But if I say to her, I don't know, sis, whether I do declare never. You should never say never. Now, if I say that, you know what's going to happen? The first person I say, there's no reason not to. There will be no tension, there will be no fighting, there will be no struggle. There is only a struggle if there's a commitment. And beloved, if you cannot win a war in your mind, you're not going to win it anywhere else. If you cannot picture yourself as victorious in your mind, if you cannot, if I say to you, if you walk into this room now, this is in your mind, you walk into this room and you see a cell phone, would you take that cell phone to the security? Now, I say, walk in your mind, get into a room, look at the cell phone. Now, resolution will say, I can see the room, and I'm in the room, I see a cell phone. I've picked up the cell phone, I'm going down, I'm giving it to the security. You've got to be able to see it and do it in your mind before you can do it physically. If in your mind you say, sure,